Hey YouTube fam, welcome back to Crime and Wine. My name is Ari and I cover true crime stories that have inspired the making of movies. If by the end of today's episode you've enjoyed today's case, then I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button and also leave a comment down below. Alright guys, so grab your wine and let's get into today's case. So today we're taking a look at the Hulu show, The Act, which was released in 2019 and stars Joey King, Patricia Arquette, and the synopsis for this movie is Dee Dee Blanchard is overprotective of her daughter Gypsy, who is trying to escape the toxic relationship that she has with her mother. Gypsy's quest for independence opens up a Pandora's box of secrets, which ultimately leads to murder. On June 14th, 2015, a disturbing post appeared on Dee Dee's Facebook page that read that B is dead. Soon afterward, another chilling message appeared on the page that said, I slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet innocent daughter, ... Her scream was so loud, LOL. These Facebook posts were discovered by some of Dee Dee's Facebook friends and neighbors, and they reported it to the local authority. When phone calls went unanswered, several of the friends and neighbors went to their house. While the friends and neighbors knew that the two often left on medical trips unannounced, they did see Dee Dee's modified car still in the driveway, making the explanation of an unannounced medical trip unlikely. So protective film on the windows also made it hard to see inside with the low light. So no one answered the door, so they gathered the friends and called 911, and when the police arrived, they had to wait for a search warrant to be issued before they could even enter the house, but they allowed one of the neighbors to actually climb through a window where they saw that the inside of the house was largely undisturbed and that all of Gypsy's wheelchairs were still present. When the warrant was issued, police entered the house and soon found Dee Dee's dead body and discovered that she had been stabbed 17 times, and it was assumed that her body had been there for days before getting discovered. So let's take a step back. Who was Dee Dee Blanchard? Well, Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard was born on May 3rd of 1967 in Chack Bay, Louisiana, to her parents Claude Anthony Petrus Sr. and Emma Lois Gisclair. Her parents, including her stepmother, would actually speak on how toxic Dee Dee was, even as a child, and they would say that she's done a number of things to try to harm those around her, such as stealing from them, writing bad checks, which I do believe she got arrested for once. And then her stepmother, Laura, would say that Dee Dee tried to poison her once using weed killer called Roundup in her food, which thankfully she survived that, but it caused her to have to spend 9 months recovering. And on top of this, Dee Dee's family would also accuse her, saying that they even think that she tried to kill her own mother by starvation while she was in her care. But none of this could ever be proven because of the lack of evidence, so that ended up just being it on that. But you be the judge of that, and by the end of this case, let me know if you believe that she'd actually try to do all of that or not. When Dee Dee was 24 years old, she gave birth to her only child, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, on July 27th of 1991 in Louisiana. The father of Gypsy was Rod Blanchard, who was 18 at the time, and Rod and Dee Dee were separated by the time Gypsy was born, but Rod tried to be an active father in Gypsy's life. At just 3 months old, Dee Dee would take Gypsy to the doctors, claiming that she would stop breathing at times while she was sleeping, and also claimed that she must have sleep apnea, in which the doctors took multiple tests, and they all showed that Gypsy was healthy, but Dee Dee insisted that was not true. When Gypsy was 8 years old, Dee Dee described her as suffering from leukemia and muscular dystrophy, and said she required a wheelchair and feeding tube, as well as some other medical problems that Dee Dee related about her daughter, and she would say that she would go on to include seizures and asthma and hearing and visual impairments. And if you guys are not aware of what exactly this may be called, then this type of behavior is actually called Munchausen syndrome. by proxy, which means Munchausen syndrome by proxy is a mental health disorder in which a caregiver, most often a mother, routinely makes up fake symptoms or causes real symptoms in a child or even an adult victim to make it appear that the victim has a true physical or even a mental health issue. And people can also just have Munchausen syndrome, not by proxy, but for themselves. But yeah, experts would later believe that this is exactly what Dee Dee had. This is just so crazy to me. I mean, since Gypsy was just a child, she became confined to a wheelchair, and regardless of test results showing Gypsy Rose was healthy, and many doctors still performed operations on her at Dee Dee's request, Gypsy Rose also took many unnecessary medications. I just think it's crazy that doctors would just prescribe medications and do these procedures on a child in spite of test results showing no reason for any of that. When Dee Dee took Gypsy to see pediatric neurologist Bernardo Flasterstein in 2007, he was immediately suspicious of Dee Dee. And the tests he ran on Gypsy all came back negative, and he noticed inconsistencies in Dee Dee's story. And after speaking with one of Gypsy's previous doctors, he suspected that Dee Dee had Munchausen by proxy. They stopped seeing him after that, and he told the dean that he didn't report Dee Dee to social services at that time because he didn't think that anyone would believe him. He said, quote, "Everyone bought their story." So, unfortunately, because Flasterstein didn't even try to report them or report the abuse from Dee Dee to Gypsy, it continued. And on top of making Gypsy seem extremely sick and unhealthy, she would use this to isolate her from having a social life by saying she was a fragile child, not healthy enough to engage in typical social activities. While still a child, many of her teeth had decayed or fallen out from the combined effects of her seizure medications and the removal of her salivary glands, a measure that Dee Dee reportedly insisted was necessary in order to prevent her daughter from drooling. Gypsy Rose would later tell ABC News that Dee Dee had induced the drooling reflex intentionally, administering a topical anesthetic to Gypsy Rose's gums in order to persuade doctors that she needed this treatment. In March of 2008, Dee Dee and Gypsy moved into a house built for them by Habitat for Humanity. And if you don't know what Habitat for Humanity is, it is a U.S. non-governmental and non-profit Christian organization, and their mission statement is, quote, "seeking to put God's love into action. Habitat for Humanity brings people together to build homes, communities, and hope." Homes are built using volunteer labor, and Habitat makes no profit from the sales. The house that Habitat for Humanity built for Dee Dee and Gypsy was completely tailored to Gypsy's illness, such as having a wheelchair ramp for her and other accommodations as well. The two would move in from Slidell, Louisiana to Aurora, Missouri in September of 2005, and they lived in a rental home before the Habitat for Humanity house was completed. Per BuzzFeed, Dee Dee claimed that their home in Louisiana had been hit by Hurricane Katrina, and their apartment was destroyed. She would also claim that Gypsy's medical records had been destroyed in the flood, which this would later turn out to not be the case, but many of her records did, in fact, survive Hurricane Katrina. On top of a custom and newly built home from Habitat for Humanity, Gypsy and Dee Dee also received many benefits that included charity-sponsored visits to concerts and Disney World, and a ton of things similar to that, including science fiction and fantasy conventions where they would often go to dressed up in costume. And when I say costume, it was age appropriate to, well, at least the age Dee Dee made Gypsy out to be. At one of these events in 2011, she made what may have been an escape attempt that ended when her mother found her in a hotel room with a man that she had met online. Again, Dee Dee produced paperwork giving a false age to Gypsy. She was actually 19 years old. So after this incident with the man in the hotel, Gypsy later recalled that after that incident, Dee Dee smashed her computer with a hammer and also threatened to do the same to her fingers if she ever tried to escape again. She also kept Gypsy leashed and handcuffed to her bed for 2 weeks. Dee Dee later told Gypsy that she had filed paperwork with the police claiming that Gypsy was mentally incompetent. This would lead Gypsy to believe that if she attempted to go to the police for help, they would not end up believing her. Gypsy eventually managed to get back online, where she joined a Christian dating site, and this is where she met 26-year-old Nicholas Godejohn in 2012. He was from Big Bend, Wisconsin, and had been diagnosed with autism. Gypsy would share later that through this 3-year online relationship, they were planning a future together. They had discussed eloping and also had sexual exchanges online that included elements of BDSM, and in 2015, they were determined that they met in person for the first time, but as you guys already know, Dee Dee did not let Gypsy out of her sight, not at all. But Gypsy had this plan that maybe if Dee Dee met Nicholas, then she would let her and him date. So the plan was that she would have her mom take her to the movie theater to see the new Cinderella movie, which she did, and she also had Nicholas meet her there at the movies. Upon Dee Dee meeting Nicholas, and I guess understanding what was going on, or that Nicholas seemed interested in Gypsy, that immediately angered Dee Dee, and she did not like him at all. So that definitely didn't go as planned, like just Gypsy had hoped. Now, guys, this part is seriously so crazy, but according to Gypsy herself, she said that during the movie, she was allowed to go to the bathroom by herself, where her and Nicholas had their first sexual encounter with each other. Yeah, I don't even know. Anyways, it was after this day that Gypsy felt like she just couldn't take any more of this lifestyle of hers. She would tell Nicholas the truth about her mother's actions, and she would end up asking him to kill her mother, Dee Dee, so that they could be together. So in June 2015, on the day of the murder, per ABC News, Godejohn traveled to Missouri, checked into a motel, and awaited to get a text from Gypsy. When he got confirmation that Dee Dee was asleep, he went to their home, where Gypsy would give him a knife. She then went to hide in the bathroom with her hands over her ears while Godejohn stabbed Dee Dee to death. Gypsy said that she stole several $100s in cash from her mother and had mailed it to Godejohn so that he could come to Springfield to do this killing. She also gave him the knife and gloves to kill Dee Dee, and the knife was actually stolen from Walmart. Gypsy had role-played once during one of her and Nick's video call, and during this role-playing video call, she dressed as the comic book character Harley Quinn, and she was shown licking a knife and staring into the camera. And what's really weird about this is that this photo was supposedly taken 2 weeks before the murder. And a bit of a disclaimer for this next part, but Godejohn had wanted a machete, Gypsy said, but she didn't think she would be able to steal one. Godejohn had also wanted duct tape to muffle Dee Dee and a taser to keep her from fighting back, but Gypsy was only able to get him a knife. And when Godejohn said he wanted to rape her mother, Gypsy said she talked him out of it and offered up herself instead. When asked whose idea it was to kill Dee Dee, though, Gypsy was clear that it was her idea. She said, quote, "I talked him into it." When asked why she didn't kill her own mother, Gypsy said that she was too squeamish. She said, "I don't like blood. I don't like the sight of blood." She also said, "I didn't believe I could do it on my own." She said she sat on the bathroom floor with her hands over her ears as Godejohn killed, or should I say stabbed, her mother 17 times. And after the killing, Gypsy and Nicholas stayed overnight at this motel in Springfield before catching a bus to his hometown in Big Bend, Wisconsin. It was there that they wrote those explicit Facebook posts, ultimately leading to the police finding Dee Dee's lifeless body and leading the police to wanting to find Gypsy, thinking she, a severely disabled child, had been abducted. So let's take it back just a second. When Dee Dee and Gypsy moved into their new home that humanity had built for them, Gypsy became very close with the neighbor's daughter, in which both her and Gypsy believed she was older than Gypsy, so she served as a friend to her and would listen to her and talk with her, which was the first for Gypsy, and Gypsy often shared information about her relationship with Nicholas. So I know that's a bit confusing considering that this friend thought Gypsy was a young teenager child and severely disabled, so even I thought that it was a bit weird Gypsy could share all this info about her online relationship with Nicholas to this friend, and her friend wouldn't think anything of it, I guess, but she didn't, and she didn't even think anything terrible could come from that online relationship. Not sure about that part, guys, but anyways, this neighbor, who was called Woodmansey, told police about Gypsy and Godejohn's relationship, and the police were then able to obtain his IP address from Facebook and track him and Gypsy down at his home in Wisconsin. Police agencies in Waukesha County, Wisconsin, raided Godejohn's family's home in Big Bend and took Gypsy and Godejohn into custody on charges of murder and felony armed criminal action. The pair were extradited back to Missouri and held on a $1 million bond. Although friends of the Blanchards were initially relieved to hear that Gypsy had been found alive, the Springfield sheriff warned in a press conference that, quote, "things are not always as they appear," which foreshadowed the news that would soon be reported about Gypsy. It came out that Gypsy had never been sick, and Dee Dee had engineered the years-long ruse that had fooled their entire community. At the time of the murder, Gypsy Rose was 23 years old and in near optimal health, except for some issues that her mother had likely caused, such as rotting teeth due to either poor dental care or overuse of medications. After his arrest in Wisconsin in 2015, Nicholas was interviewed by a detective, and according to that interview, that was played for the jury, Godejohn told the detective that he came into Dee Dee's bedroom while she slept, then stabbed her to death while Gypsy hid in a bathroom. He also said that him and Gypsy had slept together in Gypsy's bedroom. Then they left home and fled to Wisconsin. Besides a lewd conduct arrest in 2013, Nicholas had no criminal history or record of violent behavior. And though he shared none of Gypsy Rose's physical disabilities, he had been diagnosed with autism at an early age and tested at an IQ of 82 with the functional ability of a 10-year-old during the discovery phase of his murder trial. July 5, 2016, Gypsy pleaded guilty to murdering Dee Dee and was sentenced to 10 years in prison for second-degree murder. November 2018, Nicholas Godejohn was found guilty of first-degree murder after a 4-day trial, during which Gypsy testified that the plan to kill Dee Dee originated with her. February 22nd of 2019, Nicholas Godejohn was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. And he was also sentenced for a concurrent 25-year sentence on the charge of armed criminal action. Gypsy Rose would later say, quote, "The doctors thought that she was so devoted and caring. I think she would have been the perfect mom for someone that actually was sick. But I'm not sick. That's the thing. That's the big difference." She also stated that she feels more free in prison than she did with her own mother. She says, quote, "This time in prison, it's good for me. I've been raised to do what my mother taught me to do, and those things aren't very good. She taught me to lie, and I don't want to lie. I want to be a good, honest person." Currently, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is still serving out her 10-year prison sentence at the Chillicothe Correctional Center in Missouri. But it's possible that she could be paroled as early as December of this year, 2023. Gypsy will actually be eligible for parole next year in 2024, though.
Should you be in this prison? To be honest, I have complicated feelings about that. I believe firmly that no matter what, murder is not okay. But at the same time, I don't believe I deserve as many years as I got.
But your mother is dead.
She is, yes.
And she was murdered.
Yes, sir.
And you were involved.
I was.
What would be a just punishment?
I'm not really certain on that. I do believe that I do deserve to spend some time in prison for that crime, but also I understand why it happened, and I don't believe that I'm in the right place to get the help that I need.
Are you glad your mother's dead?
No, sir. I'm glad that I'm out of that situation, but I am not happy she's dead.
Alright guys, this was such a crazy case. I definitely want to hear your thoughts about, do you think Dee Dee Blanchard deserved her killing or not? Because I don't believe that anyone deserves to be killed, especially not in that way. And I also think that she needed a lot of help to get over this mental illness that she most likely did have. And I do at the same time, I feel bad for what Gypsy had to go through, but ultimately, I mean, killing somebody, that's never the answer for anything. But leave your thoughts down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode of Crime and Wine. I look forward to hearing your thoughts down below, but hit the like and subscribe button and also hit the notification bell and follow me on Instagram. I'll see you guys back here next week for another episode of Crime and Wine.